Yes, she went and had sex with another man, and it was extremely disrespectful to you, especially the way she did it. But it was just one mistake. You two have been together for a total of 20 years. You have two wonderful children. Think about all of that. Surely, you can get over this little incident. You don't have to destroy your family over one mistake. A little mistake, really. It wasn't a small mistake. It wasn't an accidental stumble. It was a planned event. They probably planned it at least a week in advance. Then she ambushes me an hour before she leaves, giving me no chance to resist. It was an elaborate plan to trick me. Really, Dad? Mom's right. You really are an ass. That was the last thing I heard from my daughter as I hung up the phone. Over the next few days, she tried to send me text messages, but I just deleted them. There were even a couple of voice messages, but I deleted them after hearing the first couple of words. It was all the same, they were just my ex-wife's words spoken in my daughter's voice. She made her choice 10 years ago and is at peace with that decision. That so-called olive branch was just an insult. She could have taken the whole olive tree and shoved it up her ass. So, I'm Tom Williams. I used to be married to Kla Williams. We were married for about 17 years. When everything fell apart, of course, I was blamed for it. That's what happens to innocent pricks in our wonderful divorce courts in this country. Blame the man and then let the ex-wife get full custody so she can tell the kids what a horrible man their father is. I swear the divorce laws in this country were written by a bunch of man-hating feminists who want to screw anyone with a penis. As I said, we were married for 17 years. We had 2 children, a 14-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. I thought everything was going great. I loved my wife, and I was sure she loved me. Our children were smart, athletic, well-behaved, and cute. Carly was a daddy's girl, and Josh was a friendly and athletic boy. I was making decent money as a mechanical engineer, and Kayla had a good job as an accountant. We both played sports to keep fit, and we were both pretty cute. Like I said, Carly was a daddy's girl to the core. She seemed to idolize me, and I was wrapped around her little finger. She had a good aptitude for math and science and decided she was going to be an engineer like Daddy. She got her driver's license the day she turned 16. She, like me, loved to drive. From the age of 10, she would go to the garage, handing me wrenches while I worked on the various toys I acquired. I am an unabashed tech enthusiast. I like old cars, mostly made by GM, that I can mess around with and collect. She instilled in me a love for them. Sometimes on the weekends, we would go to car shows together and spend all day drooling over these wonderful cars. It seemed like we were practically joined at the hip. Almost every weekend, I was also quite adept at household chores. Carly always enjoyed helping me when I did something around the house. I taught her the basics of plumbing, electrical, drywall, and painting. She was by my side when I was installing new appliances. She even helped me with the new concrete slab I put down next to the store. Although Carly turned to her mom for girl issues, which I was very happy about, I was the one she came to for advice and help with everything else: homework, drama with friends, advice on things she was thinking of doing, boys, etc. We were very open and honest with each other. When she was in trouble, I was the one she turned to for help. I had a daddy's girl, and Kayla had a mommy's boy. Josh was never into cars and mechanics like his older sister. He was a good student, but he wasn't particularly excited about science. He excelled more in English literature and social studies. He started talking about becoming a lawyer. Of course, Josh and I hung out too, but he seemed to be more attached to his mom than to me. For the past couple of weeks, Kayla seemed a little out of sorts. It wasn't a big deal, she just seemed a little distant, and lately, she's been kind of shutting down for a minute or two. A couple of times, I asked her if everything was okay, but she just waved me off and ignored me. Usually, I liked it when she blew me off, but this wasn't the case. Again, no big deal, just a little off. It was Friday night. I had just gotten home from work. It was 6 o'clock, as it usually is on a Friday night. I saw that Kayla was already home, as usual. I walked in the door and yelled out that I was home, as usual. Oddly enough, there were no smells of dinner cooking. Carrie didn't come down and greet me either. Sure, she's a teenager now, but she usually greets me if she's home. She and Josh must still be out with friends. Oh well, I put my briefcase in my office and went upstairs to change into more comfortable clothes for the evening. When I entered the bedroom, I saw that my wife had laid out her LBD dress, sexy lingerie, stockings, and 6-inch CFMs on the table. That explained the lack of odor at dinner. Apparently, we were going out for the evening instead. I wish she had warned me about that, but I didn't have any other plans anyway. Kayla was still in the bathroom applying makeup when I walked in. "Where are we going, honey?" I asked, taking off my shirt. "We're not going anywhere," she replied. That was weird. "Well, if we're not going anywhere, why are you wearing so much makeup and laying out a sexy outfit on the bed?" I said. "We're not going anywhere." "I'm going." "Really? Where are you going in that outfit without me? And where are the kids?" I had a bad feeling. "The kids are spending the night with friends." Corrected version. I don't know exactly where my date will take me, but I probably won't get home until tomorrow morning. "What do you mean your date, and you're not coming back until morning?" That's exactly what I said. "I have a date tonight, and if everything goes according to plan, I'll spend the night with him," she said calmly. "You're crazy. What the hell do you think? I'm going to put up with this for a second. Screw it. If you want to go out and have some fun, you can wait until the divorce is final. Stop being stupid. There's not going to be a divorce. I'll just do it once, and then it's back to business as usual. I need this night. We've been married for 17 years, and I just need to go out one time to prove to myself that I'm still attractive to other guys. If you really love me, you'll let me have this night, and it won't even be noticeable. If you really loved me, you wouldn't even think about it. I love you, but I need this. I'm getting older, and I need to feel like I'm still attractive to other men, younger men, in particular. Clarence is about 10 years younger than me. He's been flirting with me for the past 6 months, and I've decided to finally accept his proposal. It's just one night of sex to convince myself that I'm still a sexy woman, attractive to other men. It's just a confidence boost for me. I've noticed a few wrinkles and a couple of gray hairs starting to show through, and I need a boost to my ego. I don't need it, and I'm not going to put up with it. Remember that part of the wedding vows about renouncing everything else? If you do that, you're breaking your vows. Don't be silly. It's just a matter of one night. After I get home, I'll never do it again, I promise. Are you stupid, or is it you who believes I am stupid after you broke the vows you made to me in front of God, family, and friends? Do you really think I'm going to believe your simple promise made in private? Simply put, if you go through with this, it's over between us. You're out the door, and I'm going to see a lawyer as soon as possible. Don't be an idiot. There will be no divorce. I'm going to come home and be the loving and devoted wife I've always been. If you try to divorce me, I will fight as long and hard as I can. In the end, you will lose the house, most of your assets, and I will get full custody of the children. Furthermore, I will do everything I can to ruin your dating life and place all the blame for the breakup of the family on you. I will do everything I can to make your children hate you. In the end, I was shocked by her words. You claim to love me, and yet you do all this to me. Damn right, I love you, but if you try to divorce me, I will fight you. I don't want to lose you, so I'm just giving you the consequences of your actions. Look, I told you I only need one night to prove that I'm still attractive and sexy. Yeah, what about in a few more years? How about the next time you start thinking you're still getting older and wonder if you can still be attracted to a younger man? I promise that won't happen, and yes, I overheard some gossip. I admit I'm curious, but it's just going to be sex. There will be no love. You have nothing to worry about him taking me away from you. Like I said, it's just a one-time thing to get it all out of your head. Maybe I'll even learn a few things to diversify our sex life. A couple of new tricks will liven up our lovemaking. If you go through with this, I've already told you the consequences of your actions. If you call him right now and cancel, we can go through marriage counseling and try to save our marriage. Don't be silly. We'll be fine. If you really insist on counseling to cure your bruised ego, we can talk about it when I get back tomorrow. With those words, she continued to get ready for her date. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt, then left the room. After a while, she came downstairs dressed in the clothes she had laid out on the table. She had a small clutch in her hands and was examining herself in the mirror by the door. I sat in my chair in the living room. A car horn honked outside. He's here. I have to go now. I'll see you in the morning, she said as she walked over and kissed me goodbye. I turned my head and recoiled from her. She ended up kissing the air. She stood up again and looked at me with a frown. Fine, let it be like this once. You calm down, and everything will go back to normal, she said as she turned and headed for the door. I made one last request of her. If you walk out that door, it's over between us. You'd better think twice about throwing 17 years of marriage away, I said. She turned to look at me. I'm not throwing anything away. Like I said, I'll be back, and everything will fall into place, she replied as she opened the door and stepped out. Yes, I started crying about losing my marriage and the woman I had loved exclusively for the past 20 years, 17 years of marriage, a year of engagement, and 2 years of exclusive dating. I didn't understand how she could do this to me. She never expressed any displeasure to me. We had a normal sex life, and she never said she wanted more. I would have gladly given her more if she wanted it. We didn't fight about anything. Sure, there were some disagreements, as all couples do, but we still discussed everything and came to a mutual agreement. I had already decided what I would do if she went for it. Half an hour later, I finally got up and went to work. I guess I waited that half hour for her to come to her senses and come back. Obviously, that didn't happen. I went upstairs and proceeded to put my plan into action. It wasn't a great plan, but it was the best I could do at the time. It was a fairly large house with 4 bedrooms, the master bedroom, Carly's room, Josh's room, and a large guest bedroom. The guest bedroom was actually a second master bedroom with a private bath. We used it when her or my family came over. We also used it for kids' sleepovers. Now, however, it has become my temporary bedroom. It took me about 2 hours to completely move from our old bedroom to my new one. I had no illusions about what would happen in our divorce. This was a no-fault state. That means that the divorce laws in the state were written by man-hating feminists. Basically, unless the wife was convicted of some serious crime and sent to prison for at least 10 years, the husband got screwed. It didn't matter if the husband was a completely innocent victim. The wife ended up getting the house, the kids, alimony, maintenance used to be called child support, and the husband was left with all the bills. She gets the gold mine, and he gets the mine. After settling into my new temporary living quarters, I went down to the home office and logged into our online banking. A few years ago, I had opened another account in my name. It wasn't done for any devious purpose, just so that I could buy her gifts and surprise her. We both had access to our finances, and several times she would go in to check our finances and happen to see a purchase I had made for her. Needless to say, there were no surprises on her birthday or Christmas. So, I opened a new account in my name only so I could buy her gifts and not let her know what she would get in advance. Now, I decided to repurpose that account. She knew about it, but she didn't have access to it. First, I transferred exactly half of our checking and savings accounts to my personal account. Then, using the money left in the joint account, I paid off and canceled all of our credit cards. I then issued several new cards in my name only. Yes, I should have paid off everything before transferring the money, but I figured I'd rather pay whatever the court orders me to pay than try to collect anything from her. I would transfer my direct deposits from work to my personal account on Monday morning when I got to work. I would also have to call our broker and ask to split our investments on Monday. Having done what I could, I grabbed another glass of Jim Beam on the rocks and went up to my room for the night. I finished my drink, getting ready for bed. It wasn't a great night's sleep. For one thing, I was used to sleeping next to my wife. Without her, the bed felt empty. And then, my thoughts just didn't want to shut down. I kept going over in my mind what I could have done to prevent it. Should I have tried to get her to stay? Should I have physically restrained her? Go to this asshole's car with a baseball bat? A gun? Was it worth going to jail? It was a long night. I dozed off every now and then, but not too much. I finally decided to get up when light started coming through the window. I was still tired, so I decided to take a shower, more to help myself fully wake up than anything else. After shaving, showering, and brushing my teeth, I put on jeans and a t-shirt and went downstairs. I ate breakfast and had a couple of cups of coffee while reading the paper. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when Kayla came back to the house. I was sitting in my office at my computer, looking at apartments for rent. I had already researched the information on the attorneys and set up an appointment for Monday afternoon through their online scheduling. "Good morning, sweetheart. I'm home as promised," she greeted cheerfully as she entered the house. I just ignored her throughout the night, and this morning, my anger at what she had done had been building as I sipped my coffee. This morning, I realized that I had done nothing to deserve such disrespect from her. I also realized there was nothing I could have done to prevent what she had done. It was all on her conscience. If I had somehow managed to stop her date last night, she would have just done it again another time. There are a lot of people who say you can't stop loving someone all of a sudden. They may be right, but what you can do is turn that love into hate. The opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. With hate, emotion is still present. Marriage counselors can often save a marriage if there is hate by turning it back into love. If there is indifference, there is no chance at all. All the love I had for my wife until I got home has now turned into hate. Doing this was surprisingly easy. All I had to do was focus on the lack of respect she was showing me. Then I added her threats against me if I didn't agree. Added to that was her disregard for my feelings. I had a few hours to focus on all of this. "Honey, where are you?" "I'm home, just like I told you." I even cleaned myself up before I came to your house. "Honey," I heard her call out to me, going around the house looking for me. "There you are," she said, opening the door to my office. "I'm back, and now things can go back to normal," she continued, walking over to my desk. She walked around the table and reached out her arms to hug and kiss me. I shoved her back. "Keep your filthy, sick lips off me. God only knows what they've touched and what filth has been in your mouth." Her eyes went wide with shock. I'd never spoken to her like that in all the years I'd known her. I continued before she could respond. "You need to go to the clinic and get a full set of STD tests. I want to see a notarized clean report from you." Too much, maybe? Did I not care? No, I watched her expression change from shock to anger. I hoped she'd realize what she'd done and repent. "I see you're still coping with your bruised ego. I'm going to go up to our room and take a nap. I've had a long night, and I want to get some rest. I hope you've calmed down by now, and we can talk later. I expect a full apology from you for your rudeness this morning." With those words, she turned and left the room. I couldn't help but smile, anticipating her imminent return. And I didn't have to be disappointed. "What the hell did you do?" I heard her yell as she stepped back. "Where are your clothes? Where are all your toiletries? What the hell do you think you're doing?" she muttered, barging back into my office. "What do you mean?" I asked calmly. "All my things are exactly where they should be." "What are you talking about?" "Your closet is empty, your drawers are empty, your corner of your dressing table is empty." "What do you mean everything is lying where it should be, like I said?" My clothes hang neatly in my closet or folded and in my dresser. My toiletries are neatly in their places in the bathroom. That's not true. I just told you that your things are not in our bedroom, she exclaimed in despair. I see your problem now. You see, you still mistakenly think your bedroom is our bedroom. I just told you that all of my stuff is where it belongs, in my bedroom. You mean? Yes, I told you I wouldn't put up with it, so I moved out of your bedroom. I'm going to live in my new bedroom until I find an apartment and move out. I thought about telling her about our finances, but screw it, let her figure it out on her own. Besides, there was no point in ruining the surprise until I'd sorted out the investments. Her eyes narrowed in annoyance. We'll discuss this later. I'll give you a week to recover, and then I'll put everything back in place, and we'll go back to normal. Not until I get a notarized report that you're free of all diseases. I waved it off, turning back to the computer. I stayed in my office most of the day. The kids came home early in the morning. I briefly wondered how long it would take them to realize there was a problem. I found some apartments that looked good, filled out the forms, and made an appointment to see them on Tuesday. Then I printed out our financial statements. I would need them for my lawyer on Monday. Although I was under no illusions about selling the house, I figured that determining its value might help settle the dispute. In theory, she would owe me half the value of the share. Wishful thinking, but still. I spent the rest of the day researching divorce laws in our state. I realized I was going to get screwed over, but at least I had to have an idea of how badly it would have helped me formulate a plan of action, if not something else. Daddy, dinner's ready, said Carrie, poking her head through the door. Okay, sweetie, thank you. Kayla smiled radiantly as I entered the kitchen. It was obvious what her plan was, to kill me with kindness and show me what I would lose if I didn't accept what she did. She did the best she could. She got dressed, put on makeup, and styled her hair in a way I liked. She spent quite a bit of time in the kitchen that day to prepare my favorite meal. When I entered the kitchen, she came over to me and held out a glass of wine. I poured you a glass of wine. She held it out to me and leaned in for a kiss. I saw the pain in her eyes as I pulled away from her. I took the glass from her, walked over to the sink, poured out the wine, and put the glass on the counter. Then, I got a tumbler out of the cabinet, put a couple of ice cubes in it, and poured a couple of fingers of Jim Beam. It was out of the question that the kids sitting at the table wouldn't notice this. Walking over to the table, I sat down and started chatting with the kids. I didn't even pay attention to my wife. Dinner was clearly a stretch. I kept the kids talking as much as I could, but it was pretty obvious that we were in serious trouble. It didn't help that I didn't even put anything on my plate, let alone eat anything. These dishes were my favorites, but I just passed the bowls and plates around without even looking at them. I just kept trying to make conversation with the kids while sipping my drink. "Dad, aren't you going to eat anything?" asked Josh. Finally, "No, not hungry," was all I answered. After the most awkward dinner in the history of mankind, I just got up, refilled my glass, and headed back to my office. I didn't even bother to help clear the table. After about half an hour, I shut down my computer, grabbed the keys to my truck, and left the house to go to a nice quiet restaurant for dinner. Afterward, I stopped at a bar to have a couple of drinks. By the time I got home, it was pretty late. I saw that the light was still on in Kayla's bedroom, so as I closed the door to my room, I made sure it was noisy enough for her to hear. I locked the door and then slid a chair under the handle. As I was getting ready for bed, I heard her trying the knob and then knocking. She tried to get me to open the door for about 5 minutes, but then gave up. The next morning, I got up early. I decided that today was going to be a soccer day. There were 3 games, morning, afternoon, and evening, and I would watch them all. Yes, there were things to do this weekend, but I decided to ignore them. Screw it, I'm not going to live here for long, so Kayla can just delegate it to someone else. I had already drunk almost all of my coffee and started getting ready to make an omelet for breakfast. I was just finishing mine when Carly came into the kitchen. "Hi, sweetie, omelet?" I asked. "Sure, Dad, thank you," she took her juice and sat down at the table, and I started to prepare the food. A few minutes later, Josh showed up. I told him I would cook it as soon as I was done with his sister's food. Carly ate her omelet while I cooked Josh's. I heard Kayla in the hallway, so I poured the last cup of coffee into my glass and turned off the kettle. She walked in, shuffling, took a cup from the cupboard, and looked at the empty pot. "You couldn't even leave a cup for me," she stared at me. "The pot is right here, you know how to cook." "Never mind, so you're making scrambled eggs?" "Made them, just finished." "But feel free to make yourself one," I replied, putting one on Josh's plate. I used the last of what I made for him. I even put all the ingredients away already. To hell with her. After taking care of the kids, I walked out of the kitchen. It was just before noon. I was sitting in the living room watching the morning game. Kayla walked in with a plate and a bottle of beer. She set everything on the coffee table in front of me. "I brought you lunch and beer so you won't miss any games," she said cheerfully. Without looking at her, I kicked the plate and bottle off the table and onto the floor. She stood there with her mouth open in shock. At that moment, the commercial came on, and I got up, walked to the kitchen, and got myself a beer. Yes, I can hear all of you crying about alcohol abuse because I spilled all the beer on the floor. I wasn't going to drink any of the stuff she brought me, so it would have been a waste anyway. No, I didn't clean up after her. She brought it in unwanted, so she could clean it up herself. I didn't care if she stained the carpet. I wasn't going to live here long anyway. "We need to discuss this," Kayla began. "Shut up, game on," I replied. "For God's sake, you need to do something about your attitude. The kids have already noticed." "By all means, I'm sure they'll notice when I move out anyway." "Oh, calm down. You're not moving out, and there won't be a divorce," she insisted as she walked away. It started closer to noon. At least they were kind enough to wait until after the break. Carly and Josh entered the room together. They sat down on the couch facing me. "Dad, what's going on between you and Mom?" Carly started. "Well, now, you might know your mom and I are getting a divorce. It has nothing to do with either of you. We both love you. This is just between me and your mom." "But why?" asked Josh. "Because your mother did something I just can't accept. She did it even after I told her how I felt about it, but she did it anyway. She's not remorseful about it one bit." "You mean when she went on her date Friday night?" asked Carly. "You know about this?" I was surprised. "Well, yeah, Mom told us you weren't thrilled about it. So you know, she didn't cheat on me." "No, she didn't. She said she told you about it beforehand, so it wasn't cheating. She didn't sneak behind your back to do it, and that was the only time she did anything like that," Josh explained. "Yes, Dad. Besides, it was just one night out of the 20 years you dated and were married," Carly added. Frankly, I was shocked. I was also hurt that my daddy's girl didn't even bother to understand my position. She took her mother's side and didn't even want to hear my point of view. Really, how about if she really loved me, she wouldn't even consider having sex with anyone else? "Come on, Dad, it was just once, and she promised she'd never do it again." "Okay, then let's discuss her promises. A little over 17 years ago, she made a solemn vow to me. She made that vow in front of God, our families, and friends. She vowed to leave everyone else behind. There were no exceptions to this vow. The duration of this vow was limited till death do us part. In case you haven't noticed, none of us are dead. If she can so easily break this solemn vow made in public, how can I trust the promises she makes to me in private?" "Yes, but you also vowed to be there for her in good times and bad." Josh thought about becoming a lawyer. Hopefully, he'd do much better at it. "That's right. The problem is that your mother, in breaking her vow, broke the contract and released me from my vows." "Well, we just don't understand why you would want to break up your family over one single night," asked Carly. "Why are you saying I'm destroying the family? Why am I being blamed for what she did? Mom's not going to leave. She wants to put it all behind her and move on. You're the one leaving and making a big deal out of it. If you leave, you'll ruin the family, insisted Carly. After that, the situation did not improve. I tried to explain my position, but they did not listen. They weren't interested in my opinion. Kayla had been filling their heads with her nonsense all last day. All they knew was that Mom had done something she really needed to do, and Dad didn't love her and the kids enough to accommodate her needs. She convinced them that Daddy's little male ego caused him to abandon them all and tear the family apart. It was Daddy's fault for failing to give Mommy the one small, tiny thing she really needed to be happy. Instead, Dad decided to make everyone suffer because of his stubbornness. Really, it was just one night out of their 20 years together. Seriously, what is one night out of 7,350 nights? They eventually left when it became clear that I wasn't going to accept their position. I managed to watch the rest of the game in peace as the game was winding down. I could smell the aromas of dinner being prepared. Apparently, it was another one of my favorite meals. I just sat and watched the post-game show in anticipation of the night's game. The time was getting late. The game was supposed to start in 20 minutes. Josh came in and said dinner was ready. I just got up, grabbed my truck keys, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "Dinner is already set on the table," asked Josh. "I'm going to the sports bar to watch the game." "I'll get something to eat there," I replied. "But Mom fixed." "I'll be back after the game." "I'll probably be here for a while after it's over, though." I sat there after the game. They had a really good burger with seasoned fries. The beer was pretty good too. I only had one beer a quarter, so it was enough for me to drive. Besides, it was only 5 minutes from home. When I got home, everyone had already gone to bed, so I just went to my bedroom, locked and bolted the door, and went to bed. The plate and bottle on the coffee table were put away by the time I got home. That made me smile. Monday morning, I got up early and was out of the house before everyone was even up. The first thing I did when I got to the office was call my broker. I explained that I was going through a divorce and wanted him to split all of our investments in half. He created a new account in my name only and transferred half of our investments into it. Next up, human resources. I removed Kayla's name from the retirement account and asked them to put Carly and Josh as my heirs. I also gave them my new bank account information so they would redirect my paycheck there. Lastly, I informed my boss that I was going through a divorce, so I would need time off to meet with my attorney, court dates, meetings, etc. He was fine with it. My lawyer told me what I already knew. There was a small chance of getting custody, but it all depended on where the children wanted to live. They were old enough for the court to seriously consider their wishes. Based on my conversation with them yesterday, I wasn't going to count on that. I asked him to get started on the paperwork and asked him to get her to work on Monday. I didn't even bother driving home right after work. Monday Night Football was on, so I just stopped by the sports bar. 3 tacos for $1. I ate 3 during the first half and 3 more during the second half. I ignored text messages and phone calls from Kayla. I answered Carly and let her know where I was. Her reaction to this was not very pleasant. All 3 of them gave me an unkind look when I walked in on them after the game. I just walked into my office and closed the door. By the time I was done and went up to my room, everyone had gone to bed. Tuesday morning, I got up early and was out of the house before everyone else was up. Work was fine, and I took the day off to look at apartments. I settled on a nice 2-bedroom apartment and put down a deposit. I would be able to move in on Saturday. A trip to the thrift store allowed me to buy a couch, table, and chairs. They were to be delivered Saturday afternoon. I decided that I liked the bed I had been using and was going to pick it up as well as everything in my home office. By the time I got home, they were already eating dinner. I grinned, noticing that they hadn't even put out a plate for me. That was fine with me. I wasn't going to eat anyway. I just walked over to the refrigerator and pulled out everything I needed to make a huge sandwich. After making the sandwich, I grabbed a bag of chips and a beer and then headed to my office. Geez, Dad, why are you being such? Exclaimed Carly, entering my office. Well, Carly, simply put, your mother cheated on me. She had absolutely no respect for me, and then she threw it in my face. I'm not going to put up with that. I made it very clear what would happen if she went along with it. She went for it, even knowing what would happen. You can't seriously be ruining your family over this. Come on, it was no big deal, it was just sex. Carly, you're going to get married someday. Think how you would feel if your husband told you one night that he had a date with a younger, prettier woman and was going to spend the night with her. Well, I'm sure I wouldn't like it much, but if he promised to come back to me and it was only once, I'd hope I loved him enough to get over it. Besides, if he told me about it first, it wouldn't seem like cheating. Sure. Do me one favor, when you get married, look straight into your fiancé's eyes when you say your vows. When you look into his loving eyes and get to the phrase about leaving everyone else behind, imagine how the love in those eyes will turn to utter devastation when you tell him you're off having fun with another man. With those words, I turned my back on her and went back to work. Wednesday evening was an ambush. When I got home from work, both parents were already there. People often make fun of their in-laws, but I actually got along very well with her parents. They accepted me into their family as the son they never had. Charles, her father, was as much of a tech fanatic as I was. His only problem was that he liked Fords. Okay, he had extremely poor taste in cars, but I could overlook that. He had a '69 Mustang Fastback that was in pristine condition. Yeah, I got along very well with my parents. We were not one of those dysfunctional families where kids grow up hating their parents. They were always very loving and supportive of me. Of course, there were disagreements, and they never hesitated to tell me when they thought I was wrong about something. Sometimes we just had to agree to disagree. So, I entered the house and saw that the ambush had already been prepared. I was a little puzzled. I understood why her parents would be there. Obviously, they would be on her side. After all, she is their daughter. But what confused me was that my own parents were there. It seemed counterproductive for her. My parents would agree with me and be on my side. If she was trying to get me to accept her infidelity, why would she invite someone who wouldn't be on her side and argue that I was right to divorce her over infidelity? You've probably guessed by now that it took me a few more minutes to realize. Tom, Charles began. I want you to know that Mary, Kayla's mother, and I are very disappointed in what Kayla did. That said, we think you are overreacting to it. Yes, she went and had sex with another man, and it was extremely disrespectful to you, especially the way she did it. But it was just one mistake. You two have been together for a total of 20 years. You have 2 wonderful children. Think about all of that. Surely, you can get over this little incident. You don't have to destroy your family over one mistake. A little mistake, really. It wasn't a small mistake. It wasn't an accidental stumble. It was a planned event. They probably planned it at least a week in advance. Then she ambushes me an hour before she leaves, giving me no chance to resist. It was an elaborate plan to trick me. My mom decided to intervene. She didn't cheat on you. She told you that first. First of all, you're right that she told me. She never asked. She just said she was doing it, and I had no say in it. Even when I raised my serious objections, she didn't care. Speaking of what I said, I told her it would happen if she went for it. Tom, Father tried. I understand your pain and anger, but think of your family. We love you, son. We'll be here to help you heal. But think about what you'll do to your family. Kayla still loves you and insists she won't do it again. We all think that with counseling and some effort, you can overcome this. Tearing your family apart is not the answer. We raised you to be a good man. You need to man up and keep your family together. Don't do something stupid that will end up hurting your relationship with your family. Think of your mother and me. These are our grandchildren, and we will do whatever is necessary to keep a relationship with them. I just stood there, completely stunned. My parents were really on her side. They were really telling me that I had to accept her cheating. I just couldn't take it anymore. I turned and walked out of the room and headed for my bedroom. Kayla tried to follow me, but I closed the door in her face. 10 minutes later, I changed into jeans, a casual shirt, and boots. I didn't say a word as I walked through the living room and out the front door. They were still sitting there, trying to talk to me as I walked by. I didn't even pay any attention to them. I just walked out the door, got in my truck, and drove to the sports bar to get some dinner and a few beers. Luckily, the house was quiet and dark when I got back about 4 hours later. Thursday and Friday went the same way. I completely ignored Kayla, and my kids were still mad at me. I was surprised that Kayla still hadn't noticed that the credit cards were no longer working. I'm sure when she goes shopping on Saturday, she'll realize it. It was Friday night. I had been home for about an hour. I was sitting in my office, going through my things and deciding exactly what I would take tomorrow and what I would take later. Kayla opened the door and walked in. She was wearing a see-through nightgown, stockings, a garter belt, and high-heeled shoes. I have to say, she looked amazing. The kids are sleeping somewhere else tonight. It's time for you to forget this nonsense and come to bed with me. I want you to make love to me all night. I really need you to take me back, she said. I stared at her for a minute. No, thank you. Besides, I haven't yet seen the report from the clinic confirming that you don't have any medical conditions. Stop being ridiculous. I need you back in my bed. Your tantrums aren't accomplishing anything. Now come on, I'm horny and I need sex, she insisted. Not the slightest interest. Listen, if you don't, I'll have to call Clarence again. So what if it's a one-time thing, damn it? I replied. It was a one-time thing, but if you're going to keep rejecting me, you're the one pushing me away to someone else. Have fun with it. Let me know if you bring him here, she said before storming out of the room, leaving a trail of smoke metaphorically coming out of her ears and nose. She practically burned her tires as she raced down the street. Taking advantage of the fact that the house was empty, I gathered a few things, disassembled the bed, and loaded it into the truck along with most of my clothes. Tonight, I'll be sleeping on the couch in my office. After loading everything I wanted to take with me into the truck, I drank a Jim Beam on the rocks and relaxed. The couch wasn't the most comfortable one I'd ever slept on, but that was okay. Early the next morning, I was at the leasing office to get the key to the apartment. It took me a little while, but I managed to get everything out of the truck and into the apartment. Fortunately, a couple of friendly neighbors helped me. When I got back, no one was home yet, so the neighbor's teenage son helped me load the desk and office furniture. The computer, printer, and accessories went into the cabin. I looked back at the living room and thought, screw it, I'll take the chair too. I guess either no one came home until tonight or no one bothered to look in my office or spare bedroom. I'm surprised they didn't notice the chair was missing. It was early evening when my phone rang. Seeing that it was my daughter, I answered it. "Daddy, where are you?" she asked. "I'm home, honey." "No, it isn't. Your office is cleaned out, the bed and dresser in the spare bedroom are gone, and your chair isn't in the living room. Besides, I looked everywhere, and you're not here. Your truck is gone," she insisted. "You're right. I'm not there. I've moved into an apartment for now. Maybe after the divorce, I'll buy another house, but this one will do for now," I explained. "Geez, Dad, I can't believe you're acting so stupid. I thought you loved us," she said with disappointment. "I love you, sweetheart. I always have and always will. Just not so much that you won't leave us," I replied. "You abandoned us." "You're destroying the family," she accused. "Your mother is the one who destroyed the family. I told her this is what would happen if she went on that date, but she did it anyway. But she thought you loved her enough to get over it, and I thought she loved me enough not to do it." "Okay, whatever," I said before she hung up. Yes, the divorce was a nightmare. She fought it to the end. Counseling, she wanted me to pay. I refused. I argued that if she needed it, she should pay for it. It was one of the few arguments I won. What a waste of time. The counselor didn't like me very much. I think it had to do with the fact that I told him I was ordered to attend, but the judge didn't say anything about me actually having to participate. I endured all 12 sessions before the counselor finally gave up. She fought over literally everything. That worthless funny poster in the garage that she absolutely despised, suddenly she just couldn't live without it. The Bud Light. I accidentally left in the office. She hated it, but it had been on my desk since college. It was the centerpiece around which she was going to redesign the office. Yeah, she was only doing it to make my divorce as difficult as possible. All this time, she made sure I didn't see the kids as much as possible. Eventually, the judge granted the divorce. I had to keep paying half the mortgage. She, of course, kept the house. Child support was $2,000 a month, but I got visitation every Wednesday night and every weekend. What really pissed me off was the $1,000 a month for 5 years of spousal maintenance. It was canceled if she remarried during that time. I wasn't going to hold my breath. I learned that she had moved Clarence in with her before the divorce was even finalized. So, yeah, half of my paycheck went to her. I cashed out some of my investments and bought a small house that was in dire need of renovation. At least I got it cheap, even on a 1-acre lot. Fortunately, I was able to get all my tools out of the garage a week after moving in. I refused to even discuss them. I had most of them before we even met. When she pushed, I talked about all of her jewelry, expensive clothes, and shoes. The house had electricity, gas, and running water. There was a roof, and the walls were standing. That was enough for me. I moved into the house and started working on it in the evenings and weekends. Yes, visitation. Yes, I was supposed to have visitation. I did visit a few times. It was a goddamn disaster. Kayla was doing everything she could to prevent it. The kids were busy. They went away for the weekend with friends. Funny how it was always my weekend and not hers. Oh, Kayla has dance practice on Wednesday, Josh has an important test on Thursday and needs to study for it. The few times I was able to visit the kids on Wednesday night, they treated me with hostility. They still blame me for everything, even when I explained my point of view to them. When the opposition literally holds them captive the entire time and I only occasionally have an hour or two, it's a losing battle. After the third time, they bluntly told me they didn't want to see me anymore. Yes, I could force them, but what would be the point? Forcing them to see me would only cause more resentment. I sent them gift cards and letters for birthdays and Christmas. They all came back unopened. I continued to send monthly checks. I saw them being cashed, but I never heard a word. Graduation? I guess they graduated, but I didn't hear anything about it. I sent a registered letter letting them know about the college funds I'd organized for them. In response, I heard no thanks. Kayla basically set my kids on me, just like she promised. I focused on work, the house, and only that. I didn't go anywhere or do anything. It's amazing how much money can be saved doing things this way. As if all of this wasn't bad enough, "Hi, Mom," I said when she picked up the phone. "How are you?" she answered cheerfully. "Things are going well, as you'd expect. Anyway, I haven't heard anything about Thanksgiving. Are you going to have it again this year?" There was silence on the other end. "Mom, are you still here?" I asked. "Huh? Well, that's a little awkward." "Huh, yeah, we're going to, but Kayla, her parents, and kids are coming to the party. She's also bringing the new man in her life. We just felt that your presence here would be too awkward for everyone. After all, the kids are still mad at you for leaving them, and your presence with Kayla and her new man would only stress everyone out. Seriously, Mom? You're ditching your own son for Thanksgiving and inviting my ex-wife and her boyfriend instead? We want to maintain a close relationship with our grandchildren. Besides, this is your fault. You should have been working to keep the family together, not tearing it apart. How about you come visit us on Christmas Eve? Your father and I will spend Christmas Day at Kayla's house, but we can celebrate with you the day before." "Whatever," I muttered, ending the conversation. I spent Christmas Eve at home watching Die Hard and ignored the numerous calls and text messages from my mom wondering where I was. I wasn't in a holiday mood. I was just looking at the packages I sent to my kids. A week ago yesterday, they were returned to my doorstep. 5 years later, I received a wedding announcement. Kayla had married Clarence the weekend after I paid my last installment of maintenance. Josh had turned 18 a year early, so I was done with child support. I was now completely free of my ex-family and obligations to them. I celebrated by getting drunk. Yeah. I'm not really proud of it, but to hell with it. I put my all out and gave them all the love I was capable of, but they rejected me and treated me like crap. Screw them. Now that all my obligations to that and her 2 ungrateful offspring had been fulfilled, I decided to just put them out of my mind as much as possible. They obviously didn't want any relationship with me, so I would just forget about them as soon as possible and move on with my life. Well, except for one thing that always bothered me, I had to keep paying half the mortgage on the house. Of course, it ended when Josh graduated, but my name was still on the deed. I think Kayla was under the mistaken impression that she owned the house. The divorce said she could only live there until the kids graduated from high school. Now all bets were off. I was entitled to half of the property, and it was a pretty big property. I contacted my attorney to start with. When we got divorced, the house was appraised at about $300,000 and the equity was about $200,000. That was 5 years ago. Since then, we have been paying our mortgage faithfully, and property values in our area have increased significantly. After doing a little research online, I calculated that the appraised value was now about $500,000, and the equity was $450,000. Yes, we only had $50,000 left on the promissory note. Why did I do it? Well, for the money, of course. Who could use an extra $250,000? Besides, it would piss Kayla off. She adored this house, and having to give me a penny for anything made her furious. And I was eager for any payback for what she'd done. It would also reimburse me for all the house maintenance and mortgage payments I had to make for her. The call came about a week later. "Tom, what the hell is going on?" "Well, Kayla, not much going on around here, just working and fixing up the house I bought." "What's going on with you?" "I have to admit I'm surprised you called to see how I'm doing. After all, this is the first time you've spoken to me since the divorce. I'm not calling to find out how you're doing. I'm calling to find out why the realtor came to my house to look at it and get my signature on the sales contract." "Oh, that. Well, that should be clear since both our names are on the title. She'll obviously need your signature for the sale." "What sale?" "I love this house, and I'm not going to sell it." "Then when can I expect a check from you for my half of the capital?" "Nice try. I got the house in the divorce." "No, you only used the house until Josh graduated from high school. That happened last month. Now we can either sell it and split the proceeds, or you can buy out my half. If you think I'm going to give you $100,000 for a house I own by right, you're out of your mind." "Well, that proves I'm not crazy. I'm not asking for $100,000. You could have done that 5 years ago. Now, since the equity in the house is about $450,000, my half is $225,000. If you factor in all the expensive furniture you just had to have, let's round that amount up to $250,000. "You're crazy." "I'm not giving you a dime," she shouted, hanging up the phone. Yes, I laughed when she hung up on me. Yes, my lawyer got his cut, but it was worth it to see her face a couple of months later when the judge ruled in my favor. I even managed to convince the judge to make her pay her legal fees and my lawyer for bringing her to court over something that should have been settled out of court. The house appraised for more than I had estimated, including the value of the furniture. I got $775,000. They ended up buying me out rather than selling. I found out later that they mostly used Clarence's money. It ended up getting him in trouble, but more on that later. I managed to get the house in order. I even built a decent-sized store behind the house. I picked up an old 1972 Chevy pickup truck that was in bad shape. I was only interested in the chassis, the rest would have been replaced anyway. Over the last year, I have taken it apart, cleaned it up, and completely repainted it. When the paint and bodywork were done, it was time to tackle the running gear. The rear differential was still good, but I rebuilt it anyway. It had to be able to handle the power I was going to put through it. The transmission was a Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual. It was fast stuff. I decided to have some fun with the engine. It was just going to be a toy, not for everyday driving. A 427 big block. I managed to find it online at a parts depot. I bought it and had it shipped. Once it arrived, I put it on the stand and started taking it apart. I had to send it to a machine shop to bore the cylinders, connecting rod, and cam, new forged crankshaft, 10/1 pistons, nice heavy cam, heads ported and polished. Then double spring valves were put in, and a supercharger to bring it all up to speed. Yeah, I'd probably run more gas stations than tire shops, and I'd run very few gas stations. I checked the valve covers, polished the aluminum on the supercharger, and used steel-braided hoses. It almost required sunglasses to open the hood. The first time I hit the road, I almost wrecked it. I was driving down the highway and decided to punch it. Big mistake. The rear tires blew out instantly. I barely managed to keep the car in a straight line before I let off the gas. Remember, take it slow on the gas pedal. After that, I started driving more carefully. A few weeks later, I saw an ad for a car show open to the public. Thinking it would be fun, I filled out the form and paid the entry fee. When the day came, I loaded up the '72 Chevy and drove to the park. I registered and got my spot. As I was setting up my car, I noticed a very nice 1968 GTO parked next to me. I set up my shade structure in the area behind the truck. A couple of chairs and a refrigerator completed my setup. Then I noticed attractive red-headed girls setting up chairs behind the goat. Yes, I said redheads, plural, there were two of them. One looked about my age, and the other was about 10 years old, probably still a schoolgirl. There were two very important things I didn't notice. I didn't see a boy with them, and I didn't see anything on the third finger of the older woman's left hand. Of course, I looked closer. "Good morning." "I like your car," said I, cheerfully. They both looked up from their studies. "Hi, thanks." "I like your truck too," said the older one. "Thank you. Have you been to many of these events?" "This is my first one." "I mean, I've been to car shows before, but only as a spectator. This is the first one I'm participating in." "My name is Tom, by the way," I said. "This is the third time my daughter and I have participated. My ex has hosted it several times before." "I'm Marie, and this is my daughter, Jenny," she replied. "In that case, when you're done, why don't you two join me in the shade? I have a cooler full of drinks, and I could use any information about these shows I can get." We ended up spending most of the day here. Once in a while, we would get up and talk to someone about our cars, but it was a very enjoyable day. No, I didn't win any awards, but I still had fun. I found out that she divorced her husband 3 years ago because she caught him cheating. He was cheating with his boss's wife. She made a deal with him. She would give him all the videos if he would rewrite the GTO to her. She told me it would hurt him, and she wanted him to keep his job so he could continue to pay her alimony and maintenance. It was a double win for her. Besides, his boss was an asshole, and she didn't care at all about his wife tooting his horn. Jenny was also friendly and joined in the conversation. She told me that she